Excellent. Very good. Well, there really a twofold purpose of this call. The first purpose is to congratulate you on the award from Crazy Good Turns on our Inspiring Generosity Award. I'm just so impressed by what you're doing.
Oh my God. Wow. I'm stunned. I thought this was like the second round and it's still up in the air. And I celebrate things after they happen, not in the run up to it, because it's never quite over until it's over on a wide array of things, as you know. So wow, I'm stunned, but I'm overjoyed. I'm very happy. This will allow us to work on a couple of additional cases covering, investigative expenses, perhaps DNA testing, depending on which thing happens at first in a wide range of cases that we're working on. So, wow, I'm stunned.
Well,
I don't know. Thank you so much.
congratulations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crazy Good Turns, the podcast that recognizes and celebrates people who do great things for others. I'm your host, Frank Blake, and today we have a terrific show for you. Today, we give out our Inspired Generosity Awards. This is sort of our version of the Oscar for generosity. For the last several years, we've asked you, our listeners, to nominate people or groups whom you think have done crazy good turns for others. Then the team here at Crazy Good Turns, our producers Brian Sabin and Megan Hanlon, and Leslie Nunn and I, pick from among the nominees the ones we think are most notable. And Crazy Good Turns gives them each a $10,000 award. As I said, we've been doing this for a while now as an end of the year show. And I've been really pleased to see how it's caught on and grown. This year, we had over 500 nominations. So first, I want to thank all of you who took the time and submitted a nomination. That's a crazy good turn in and of itself. You're taking the time to recognize and celebrate someone else. Out of all those nominations, we selected 5 for a $10,000 Inspired Generosity Award. It was, as you could imagine, really difficult to narrow this down to just 5. And I can tell you that Brian, Megan, Leslie, and I spent a lot of time in the selection process. It's both heartening and inspiring that there are so many people doing great things for others in a completely unsung way. Honestly, there's no right way for deciding the award winners, but as you'll hear in the show, the people we're highlighting made an impact on us. And it's a wide-ranging group, from an innocent man who spent 16 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit and then dedicated his life to helping others, to a boy of 5 years old who realized that kids in shelters need shoes and has, since that young age, continued to help kids with shoes, building an organization that now provides shoes to more than 125,000 needy kids. I mean, seriously, there are just crazy good turns around us. We just need to look and celebrate them. So again, I want to thank our listeners for helping in this process. I hope we get 10 times more nominations next year, and that we'll give out even more Inspired Generosity Awards. I want to thank Brian, Megan, and Leslie for going through the submissions with such care and dedication. And I want to thank everyone doing unnoticed kindnesses every day. We don't spend enough time thanking those around us who do these great, generous things. And this is one opportunity of doing that for the 5 folks we're going to talk about today. We don't have a red carpet, but now is the time to go on to our Inspired Generosity Awards show. How we're going to approach this is I'm going to start describing one of our awardees, and then Brian, Megan, and Leslie will take one each that they've selected to talk about. I'm going to start with an organization called the Deskovic Foundation. Now, what
to me was amazing about the Deskovic Foundation is the underlying story of Jeff Deskovic. It's incredibly inspiring. And I want to just play one of the first questions I asked Jeff, and then we'll get into a little bit about why this is such an amazing story. Really, what's inspiring about this story is I read it and I go, if I were in your shoes, Jeff, I'd be a pretty bitter person in terms of what happened to you. And yet you turned that around to helping other people. Really, just extraordinary.
Your words mean a lot. They don't fall on deaf ears. I do want to share with you. I'm not angry or bitter because, look, I was angry the first week I was home and I felt it was like destroying me, so I realized, look, I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. And I can't do that if I'm simultaneously angry or bitter. Then an additional line of reasoning was that I feel like I've lost so much already. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life?
To make sense of that initial discussion with Jeffrey, you need to understand what happened to Jeffrey. When he was 17 years old, he was wrongly accused and convicted of rape and murder and imprisoned for those crimes. Eventually, he was exonerated, but not before he served 16 years. 16 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. And I want you to listen to how Jeff discusses this.
DNA established my innocence while simultaneously identifying the actual perpetrator. My charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds. I was an individual advocate for about 5 years. I was speaking, I was writing, I was meeting with elected officials, I was doing media and ultimately new media interviews. But that was just as an individual advocate. So after 5 years, I got financially compensated, and I wanted to take that advocacy work to the next level while also getting involved in freeing people.
Now, since his release, Jeff has done some amazing things. He went back to school, he enrolled at Mercy College, he got a law degree. And most importantly, he took the funding that he received from an innocent person who was wrongfully jailed. He took that compensation and has turned it to an effort to help others who are wrongfully imprisoned.
I sort of did a 360 on Mr. Deskovic. As I listened to it more, just the interviews, once I heard the interviews, versus, just talking about it on paper. What an impressive guy. He took the worst situation and turned it into the most positive situation. Sort of mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. When I think about what I would do if I had been in prison for 16 years for something that I didn't do, wow, just what an impressive person.
Right. What a great disposition. How does one bounce back from that?
Yeah. There's so many interesting angles to me about the Deskovic Foundation and about Jeff's commitment to helping others. But I will reflect on one thing which just particularly strikes me. Early in my career, I actually worked on prison-related issues, and I spent a fair amount of time in prison amongst the prison populations. And when you do that, there is a saying, which is sadly true, which is there are no innocent people in prison, which is said sort of sarcastically, because a lot of people develop defenses around why they're in prison and have a story around it and try to make themselves out as innocents when they're not. That, to me, further compounds the psychological difficulty of actually being innocent and being in prison. I think it's just such an amazing example. Jeff is such an amazing example of someone who's taken a personal tragedy, did not run away from it, but in fact turned that tragedy into fuel for helping others. And so I just close it out with two things. One, a comment from Jeff on his work. I think I read this right. You've had more than a couple of dozen lives that you've impacted in terms of releases from prison, But over and above that, you've had some direct exonerations, correct?
Correct. Yes. So there's an aggregate of 15 people that we've been able to get home, get released from prison. That's exactly right, the way you put it. And out of those 15, 6 of them have been exonerations.
Wow. I mean, Jeff, that's got to be a thrill for you.
It is. It's very humbling. It blows my own mind because, to go from being in prison myself, for 16 years, with a 15 to life sentence where I did the minimum already, and because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility, they turned me down for parole. And I think, well, I'm never going to cave. I'm never going to say I'm guilty because, I'm not. And really, that's kind of what got me here in the first place, giving in to coercion. I'm not going to repeat that again. But yet they're not going to let up either. So I guess this is it. So to go from that to then being able to free people, it is a humbling, mind-blowing thing.
And then the second thing I'd like to close out the discussion on the Deskovic Foundation with is I ask everybody who's done a crazy good turn for you in your life. But when I asked Jeff that question and he gave me the response that you're going to hear, you're going to realize truly the cinematic quality of what happened to him, because truly there was someone, an assistant who was helping on his case. But for her, the entire arc of his life would have been altered. And he never would have had the redemption and ability to help others that he's experienced. This is a great reminder for all of us on the doing crazy good turns for others, that sometimes that crazy good turn involves persistence and caring enough about someone else that you are persistent and you push. So let's hear that.
So out of a bunch of people that had a hand in exonerating me, I dare say the person that probably played the biggest role was a woman named Maggie Taylor. So she worked in their intake department. She was not an attorney, and they had a meeting. So at that time, the way they decided if they were going to take a case or not is the intake department met with the lawyers and they jointly discussed and they jointly had to approve. So in that first meeting, they turned me down, and she said, we all instantly knew that you were innocent because the DNA wouldn't match you. Okay. But the question is what could we actually do that would constitute something new? Because you have to find new evidence that already wasn't in the record. Otherwise, the court won't consider it once the appeals are done. So the lawyers turned me down, and she said, I went to the bathroom after that and I cried my eyes out. And then I decided I'm not letting this one go. And so she, on a subsequent occasion, presented the case a second time, and they turned me down a second time. And then she went back a third time. And each time she goes, she has to give like a different line of reasoning, a different potential path to exoneration. Otherwise, kind of like the court, why are we revisiting if there's nothing new to consider? And this time she got it across the goal line, giving an idea that I had suggested. I had said in one of my letters, what about the DNA data bank? Maybe we can find the actual perpetrator and exonerate me at the same time. And so that idea is what persuaded them. They saw a potential path to exoneration. That's why they took the case. And so without getting the further testing, consenting to the testing, consenting to letting me out and the exoneration and the legal work that followed, none of that would have happened. That was my crazy good turn that I received.
We get lots of great answers to the who's done a crazy good turn for you from our people that we're interviewing. That now ranks as one of my favorites, and I can sort of imagine the scene in a movie about Jeffrey with that assistant making that difference in his life. Now, with that, we're going to turn to Locker 505, and Brian is going to take you through what was so arresting and compelling about the Locker 505 story. Brian.
Absolutely, Frank. Thank you. So Locker 505 is out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they're just an organization that you wish that everyone had everywhere. What Locker 505 is essentially doing is not just being a clothing bank for kids. They're not just helping kids who need some extra support. They're doing it in a way that's just awesome. It's thoughtful, it's helpful to their dignity, and it provides them support that's lasted them in some cases 12 years or more, as you'll hear from Locker 505's founder. Her name is Kim Kirshen, and I'd like to have her just start by explaining the name Locker 505, because I feel like that is one of the thoughtful elements that they put into the work that they do and what makes it so great.
So our legal name is actually Students Clothing Bank. It's DBA Locker 505. We really wanted it to be where the kids could say, I'm going to Locker 505, or I got it from Locker 505, not I got it from a clothing bank. Kids need to be treated with dignity and respect. And so that was a big thing for me from day one, was that the kids were treated like we want to be treated, right? Just like anybody wants to be treated.
That thoughtfulness, the way that Locker 505 is there to serve these kids and to serve their dignity, carries over to the experience inside the store. Here's Kim describing what it's like when one of the kids they serve walks in.
It actually looks like you're walking into a store, and each student is given a personal shopper. So they go with a personal shopper through the store that helps them select items that will fit them, that is their style, their color, that type of thing. Now, our clothing is sometimes gently used and sometimes new, but socks, underwear, and shoes are always new, kind of for obvious reasons. They get that, but they also get hygiene. A lot of our kids don't have a toothbrush or toothpaste. They don't have shampoo. We give them all that hygiene, soap, shampoo, those types of things. We also give them school supplies. And sometimes the schools are very good about providing that at school, but what we've learned is they don't have the school supplies at home. So they don't do their homework. They come to school without their homework, and that starts this whole cycle of failure for them. You know, they get in trouble the minute they walk in the door because they don't have their homework. And then it starts a whole day of, I'm not worth anything, right? Type of thing. So we make sure they have school supplies both for school and at home. But the icing on the cake is they get books to read, personal books to read, and they get a stuffed animal and a toy. And that's just kind of the icing on the cake to make it a little bit more fun for them. And we frequently get, this is better than my birthday, or this is better than Christmas, or, that type of thing. And that's our goal, is that they leave here happy and excited, but at all times are treated with dignity and respect.
I love that idea of a personal shopper for these kids, someone who's there to help them, who's there to talk with them, get to know them, and help them find clothes that are appropriate and also look good on them. And so I wanted to learn more about those personal shoppers, who they are and how they do the work that they do. And here's how Kim describes it.
We only let certain people be personal shoppers. It can't be just anybody that we hire or walks in the door. It takes a certain personality. It has to be somebody who likes kids, enjoys kids, is partly a kid themselves, so to speak. They have to be fingerprinted, background checked, all of that stuff. You cannot have a background of any kind to work with those kids. And they have to be somebody that really cares about that kid and what's happening to them. And we do put them through training like how to work with an autistic kid. It's a little different. How do you look at a child and see red flags for child abuse or those types of things? Or if they are in an abusive relationship, even like the teenagers, we've put them through things like, how do you, what might they say? Suicidal. They've been through suicide prevention type things. What are some red flags that a kid might say that would alarm you to they might be considering suicide? So they go through some training for those types of things.
So, Brian, I think this personal shopper idea is just brilliant. And beyond that, if I understood Kim correctly, the personal shoppers not only are selected very carefully and trained very carefully, but they stick with the kid. So you have the same personal shopper over time, somebody who gets to know you. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. She talked about how kids will come back and they'll ask for the same personal shopper and over again. And as much as they can accommodate that, they sure try to. Those personal shoppers are definitely, special individuals who are there to help support these kids. Once those kids visit Locker 505, after they've worked with the personal shopper, they come out of there with a full week's worth of clothing. They can return to the store up to 3 times per year. Kim and her team have been providing this level of service to kids for the past 12 years. And during that time, it's just grown exponentially. Last year alone, they provided more than 5,000 kids with clothing. Kim says that they're on pace to serve many more than that this year.
Our first year, we saw 421 kids. We were in about 800 square feet. Now we're in almost 10,000 square feet. Not in a million years did I believe that we would grow to this size and impact that we have on a daily basis. We have actual students that we saw when we first opened that come back and volunteer.
After more than a decade of doing this work, Kim is still serving at Locker 505, and she doesn't intend to stop.
Clearly.
It definitely is. I do love what I get to do. I have to say, I absolutely love coming to work. You know, my boys ask me, are you ever going to retire? And I'm like, well, technically I am. I don't get a paycheck. I am volunteering. And why would I retire from this and go volunteer? I'm not one to sit around and do nothing.
It is phenomenal. It is just a great story. I mean, not only the helpfulness, but the creativity of it, the caring of it. Just an amazing, inspired generosity award winner. Megan, so you chose to discuss Gotta Have Soul, and that's spelled SOLE. So talk to us a little bit about Gotta Have Soul. Tell our listeners about that.
Sure. Thank you, Frank. So Gotta Have Soul is a nonprofit that provides youth in homeless shelters with brand new shoes. And you might ask, why shoes of all things? Well, homeless children are often experiencing serious poverty or have had to leave a bad situation in a hurry. They will walk into a shelter wearing shoes that are worn to holes or don't fit or aren't appropriate for the elements. And it's one of the ways that kids can really stick out in a crowd and make them feel embarrassed or inferior. And this was something that Gotta Have Soul founder Nick Lowinger noticed really early on while he was accompanying his mother, who worked in shelters as an art therapist. He was only 5 years old when he started doing this, and it first struck him as an idea. So here, Nick explains.
Essentially, my mom is an art therapist and was doing a lot of work in the shelter system when I was a kid. And so when I was 5, I had just gotten a brand new pair of light up sneakers, as many 5-year-olds do. I was very excited to stomp around and show them off to other kids. And, you know, before we went into the shelter, my mom said that I shouldn't do any of that because a lot of the kids might not have shoes at all, let alone new shoes or shoes that fit. And so obviously at 5, that really burst my bubble. I had only ever known shoes to be a given. And so when I went in and I was meeting the kids and becoming friends with them, I was looking at them and I was also looking down at their feet. And I saw a lot of kids who were barefoot or wearing shoes that were really tattered or held together with duct tape, shoes that didn't fit. And then I had just never seen that before. And it really struck me. It bothered me. I knew I wanted to do something, but I was 5. So there wasn't a ton that I thought I could do at that time. But, you know, when I went home, I went through my closet to see what, you know, shoes I could donate or clothing that didn't fit anymore. And I realized quickly when I made the donation of those things to the shelter that I could only help the few kids who could fit into my size. And so that was really when the seed was planted for what eventually became Gotta Have Soul.
And this passion to help never left him. And the idea returned to him when he was about 12 and he was looking for a bar mitzvah project idea. He explained to his parents that, you know, I remember seeing this and I want to help. And his parents said, you know, that sounds a lot like a charity or a 501c3. And of course, as a child, he had never heard of this. But his parents helped him set it up, and he received the official letter on the first day of 7th grade, which is really, really young for somebody to start displaying such amazing generosity and helpfulness.
Well, I think the beauty of childhood is kind of that, like that naivety, if you will, that like is so beautiful, where, you know, you haven't had the influence of the world and stigmas that have built up. And so I just saw other kids, you know, they were new potential friends to me, and I became friends with some of them back then. And, you know, I didn't really pay much attention to like the financial background or the haves and have nots. But to me, shoes were always a basic need. And it was something that I had always assumed everyone would have. So, you know, when I saw that, I just saw a bunch of fellow peers of mine who couldn't do the things that I could do. And to me, the easy solution was get them the shoes they need so they can play and be kids. And I think it was really that like simple idea and most importantly, that lack of stigma.
So he stuck with it all this time, but he wasn't really sure that that was going to be his path in life. He went to college to explore his options and considered a career in finance or business like a lot of his peers did. But he graduated in 2020, which was the worst of the pandemic when a lot of people were suffering during pandemic shutdowns. He saw homelessness skyrocket during that year, and he kept thinking that nobody was really addressing this. So he decided that he had caught the bug of giving back and he was going to go back to it. Since its founding, Gotta Have Soul has provided shoes to more than 125,000 kids in more than 220 shelters. But what really makes the program special is that each pair of new shoes has a personalized note that's put into it, and that really speaks to each one of the kids. And here Nick explains.
So we have cards that people decorate that it's like a little stencil of almost like a Converse kind of sneaker with our logo, and people draw on them, decorate them, write a beautiful personalized message of hope with the kid's name. So when they're receiving the shoes, it's like a really special moment and a gift that, I mean, it resonates so much with them. You know, we want to make sure they get the shoes that fit. So if they try a shoe on, it's too small, too big, whatever, like we'll swap it out with something in our stock that will fit them. Oftentimes they don't want to give the shoes back because they think they have to give the card back also. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing that like it shows them someone in the community and someone in the world cares and like took the time out of their day to do something special for them.
For children, they serve in the shelters, and these shelters are primarily located in the Northeast. This is one of those things that can help them feel confident and comfortable and important during an otherwise traumatic time. Nick told me a story of just one of these children who was deeply impacted by getting new shoes after leaving a domestic violence situation.
There was a family that the mother and son had to flee a domestic violence situation and immediately get into, an emergency shelter. That night, the dad left after, thankfully, what was the last beating that his mother had to endure. And they just grabbed what they could and ran out of the house and made their way to a shelter. And he didn't really pay attention to what he grabbed. What he did end up grabbing was his mother's fur-lined boots. And so that was what he had. That was his only pair of shoes, right? And so you can imagine being a teenage boy going to school in women's fur-lined boots. He was getting bullied. He was very unhappy. Obviously, with all of what was going on, that's enough of an emotional toll. And on top of what he was now going through with the footwear situation. So, we were able to get sneakers immediately to them so that they didn't have to continue living with that stress. And, from what the shelter workers told us, there was a real visible change, almost like an excitement to go to school because now he wouldn't face the ridicule. Obviously, there was a lot to process individually from the situation they were in, but to alleviate that big stressor was huge, and really like set him up to succeed in the situation that they were in. That really hit home for me just as an only child who's very close with both my parents and thankfully not in a situation like that. I can only imagine, your head goes, I'm getting my mom out of here. We're going to get safe. The last thing you're thinking about is taking care of yourself. And so it's nice in a situation like that where oftentimes a lot of these kids don't have a constant, we can be that constant.
I loved the story behind Gotta Have Soul and the fact that Nick is continuing to devote his life to helping others through this organization. It's just a really fantastic way to help kids who are hurting in so many ways. And I'm thrilled that this grant will allow Gotta Have Soul to help even more.
Megan, the amazing thing to me is we've featured other crazy good turns that children have started, but I can't remember too many where you have a through line from the age of 5 through to college. I mean, quite extraordinary.
It is. It really speaks to his dedication and how much he believes in this program and the results that he can see that he knows he's doing a good thing and he wants to continue. And I love that.
Truly, truly inspired generosity. Thank you.
Can I make one little interjection?
Please.
Sure. What I loved about it too, especially because when you get shoes, if you don't have socks, you will get blisters. So I love the fact that he gives socks with each pair of shoes and a personal note. I thought that was the cherry on the ice cream there.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well, now, so Leslie, you're going to discuss Bridge of Hearts.
Yes. Bridge of Hearts really touched my heart because I have teachers in my family, several, and they often in conversations will say, we know when those children come to school, we know which ones have a little bit more of a challenge or there's things going on at home. And those are the teachers that aren't just teachers. They're dialed in and it's a calling for them. And those children are important. They put a little extra into those kids and they identify needs and they meet those needs where they see them. And this organization, Bridge of Hearts, is out of North Carolina, and it's founded by a group of retired teachers. And they retired and they had a few little weeks of fun. And then they were like, well, that was fun, but what about what we're called to do? They went ahead and they put their heads together. And who we have interviewed is Linda Morris.
I think if you've spent 25, 30, or 40 years working with children, you must love children. And we did, and we do. And we got to thinking, okay, so now we're not in the school building, but that doesn't mean that we can't help children. And one of the things that we had seen when we were all working together was that when birthdays came around, some of our children who came from rather well-off families, the mom would come in with this huge tray of cupcakes for everybody, and they were all beautifully decorated. And you knew there was a party coming after that for that child. But then we had children who didn't have that ability to bring things in. And you knew that in some cases, there wouldn't be a birthday party. One of the things that we know as an educator is how very important birthdays are to a child. It's a rite of passage. And if you think about it, one of the first things we ask children when we meet them is, "Oh, how old are you?" And they'll say, "Oh, I'm 3," or "I'm 4.5." So it's an important part of their development. And we thought, well, can we do something about that? So because teachers are optimistic and sometimes naive, we went, sure, we can do that. And then we quickly realized we had no money and we had no space and we had no volunteers. But that didn't stop us. And so we jumped in and started making birthday bags.
Birthdays are really special to kids. And so they came up with doing a little bag, and they would send it home with the parents with the cake mix, presents, and they let the parents do the cake and give the gifts. It didn't highlight that their children were going to do without. It gave the parents the opportunity to be the hero. And they don't put their names on anything, the organization name. They don't put a big sticker. This is from Bridge of Hearts. They do it through the schools and let the schools give it to the families. So the families are also feeling special too, like, hey, I didn't let my child down. I did
and
it.
Probably for the child, less saying this child is kind of treated by third parties.
Exactly.
The child the same as everyone else in a way.
Exactly. It's just a win-win. It really, really is. Again, I just think it's so special, and they've gone on to expand. After they started doing that, they looked around and they said, hey, what else can we do? And they realized they needed snacks, that oftentimes things that most kids take for granted, they didn't have a little snack. So they started doing snack bags. They started doing hygiene kits because, that's one thing too that will separate those kids that need a little boost is just hygiene and things like that. And they're always looking to help in different ways. And it's such a boots on the ground, grassroots effort. Like so many of these things we highlight, it's dependent upon volunteers and just the goodness in people's hearts and meeting a need where they see it. And I just think that's awesome.
It's also, I enjoyed a story that she told about one of the volunteers running into a bakery and somebody recognized.
Yes.
One of the little bakery workers realized that there was a real problem, and she came up, and so she was talking with Chloe, the leader. Somehow or another it came up that the birthday was for me and that I ran Bridge of Hearts. And she went, Bridge of Hearts? And she went, yeah. She said, I moved to this town 2 years ago, and I was really down and out. And you all provided a birthday party for my child. And I cannot tell you how thankful I am that you enabled me to do that. She said, now I'm okay. I'm back on my feet. But she said, you stepped in and filled that need for me. Wow. And I am so appreciative.
It is a great story. And I loved, Leslie, the way you introduced it in terms of how teachers connect with their students and just the passion to help their students. And when I think about over the time period that we've been doing Crazy Good Turns, the number of people who, when asked who's done a crazy good turn for you, talk about their teacher is just, that's sort of the backstory of this entire award, is what teachers do for our students.
Exactly. It's a calling, not a job.
Brilliant. What a remarkable difference they make.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Brian, you're going to be talking to us about Golden Strings.
I am. It is an honor and a pleasure to talk to you about Golden String. They're based nearby me. They are in Youngstown, Ohio. As listeners may know, I'm over in Cleveland. And Golden String came to our attention through a friend. His mother was a longtime volunteer for this organization. She spent her time serving one of their many organizations. Golden String is actually one of several, but we're going to call it Golden String to encompass everything just for the sake of simplicity here. And what they do is provide a number of services to people with disabilities. And these disabilities can range from physical disabilities to mental disabilities and difficulties. And all of this started with their founder, Jimmy Sutman, who at a very young age had a friend who had some needs. Here's Jimmy describing how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't brought up with a lot of folks with disabilities or anything like that. There was just a need, and I was 25 years old, and I didn't have a lot of responsibility, and this family needed somebody to watch Joe.
So Joe here is Joe Gallagher. He was a 50-something-year-old man with Down syndrome. And at the time Jimmy was working with him, he was working through the state of Ohio, providing programming for adults with developmental disabilities. And in fact, at that job, Joe was Jimmy's first client, and they formed a bond.
I had known his family. Joe was spending 2 weeks living with one brother and 2 weeks living with another brother in his early 50s. And at one point, he just rebelled. He wasn't choosing one brother over the other. He just didn't want to move every 2 weeks. And the family was distraught. And I said he can move in with me. I got this crazy idea. I went back to Youngstown State University, took a couple classes, and was licensed through the state of Ohio then to be a residential provider.
So what started with this one-to-one relationship, this one-to-one friendship, has grown into a residential care program that now serves more than 80 adults with disabilities. They have their own place now. They no longer operate out of Jimmy's home. But the experiences that Jimmy had with Joe still influence many of their activities. And it all started with baseball.
Joe was a huge Cleveland Indian fan, called the Indians at that time. Every night he used to even pray for the Cleveland Indians starting lineup. He would just go through the starting lineup and pray for those people, not the subs. He loved the Indians, so we would watch them on the radio, mostly Tom Hamilton on the radio. But we both were poor, and we heard an ad that the Cleveland Indians Charitable Foundation will give free tickets to people, but you must be a 501c3. So strangely enough, that's simply how we started Golden String Inc., was to get Joe Gallagher Cleveland Indians tickets. Now it is really expanded to, driving people to the Cleveland Clinic, a lot of transportation, but we're building GABA Camp, a camp for adults with disabilities. We already have a little restaurant called Joe Gallagher's Lunch Bucket, where we have 35 adults with disabilities that serve breakfast and lunch to our area governmental agencies like the Board of Elections, Department of Jobs and Family Services. Those types of groups keep us going.
So today, Golden String and Purple Cat, one of its sister organizations, make all of these activities possible and more. They have a farm where the disabled can come and help care for animals, and a camp where people can come and spend a week relaxing, enjoying nature, and learning some more life skills. The camp, the farm, and all of these great activities have led the organization to get more attention both regionally and from out of state.
I'm just coming off of a meeting of an individual from Florida, Naples, Florida. His family bought a house here in Youngstown simply because they want their son, who is squarely on the autism spectrum, to have Golden String activities and get camp and all of this as they're aging. And next week on Monday, I have another person from Florida coming in. There's no coincidence with Florida because, it's one of the states that has very little social services for adults with developmental disabilities. They're catching up. I pay attention to that. They're catching up, but they're way behind. So states like Ohio and New York and Pennsylvania are getting an influx of folks with disabilities because their families realize, we want to take our one to a place where there's lots of services.
So Frank, you spoke with Jimmy.
I did. Amazing guy.
Absolutely. And during your interview, you asked a very appropriate question of him. With so many organizations providing so many services to so many different people, how does he find the energy to get all this done? I thought his response was great, and I wanted to share that here.
I'm one of those people that I love to be a problem solver. When an individual says to me, my dream is to go to Universal Studios in Orlando, well, yeah, that's easy. We can make that happen. So I enjoy doing those types of things. And it's people. I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to buy anything. These are people that I'm dealing with in their lives. And I get out of bed with a spring in my step because I know I got to do X, Y, and Z. And because next to our camp, we have a farm, those animals need fed, even taking it further. I was like, I got to get up. I can't sleep in. There's a chicken that's ill. I got to go check this out. I don't know. I don't have a definitive or I can't put it in a couple sentences. But, I love life and I love people. And
I just think it's a great example. This is an amazing guy, and what he's done is incredible. I have an interesting anecdote at the end of this, because after talking with Jimmy, we exchanged emails on a number of things. And one of them, he said he had been late to respond because the Home Depot volunteer team had been there working on his farm. And I thought, wow, that's the perfect exclamation point. As having worked years at Depot, I'm so proud of Depot's giving back to the community and doing inspired generosity, and so impressed with what Jimmy is doing and what he has succeeded to build. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing story. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jimmy. Inspired Generosity Awards. I will also close this out by saying that as the four of us reviewed all these submissions, not surprisingly, we go, gosh, there are others that we need to recognize. So we decided to add 5 organizations to give $2,000 to, because these are great, or every organization's great. We give money away to every one of them, but these 5 we wanted to also highlight. Some of them are particular, frankly, because of their long-term relationship with Crazy Good Turns. So we want to give $2,000 to Uplifting Athletes, which was recommended to us by Shannon Cassidy, who, as you'll remember, was one of our guests a while back and has a great, generous heart. And Uplifting Athletes is a great organization. We're giving $2,000 to the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. And this one is much more personal to me because the suggestion came in from Bill Lenahan. And Bill Lenahan is a colleague of mine who I would put as one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, and also one of the most philanthropically inclined. And so when he said award money to this organization, I say, of course, we're going to do that. So $2,000 to the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, $2,000 to the New Hanover County Community Justice Center. Also, this one has a personal relationship with me because it was suggested by Mike Rossi, who is a Home Depot associate who I worked with years and years ago in Wilmington, North Carolina. Just a phenomenal person. And we've recognized him and his philanthropic interests in the past in Crazy Good Turns. I'd like to do that again. Also, $2,000 to the Arts Center Theater in Plano, Texas. I referenced that earlier in the introduction. We got, gosh, Brian, how many submissions do we get on the Plano, Texas? It was a lot, right?
We heard from a lot of people about Arts Center in Plano.
Thank you, everyone, for bringing this one to our attention. It's a great group that does basically theater for neurodiverse individuals. So really, really powerful nonprofit. And then finally, Spartansburg Events, which
Spartanburg, Pennsylvania.
And their Inspired Generosity, just a community helping each other. I mean, it's just a great, heartwarming story of a community pulling together to help each other. Small town, 300 residents, but everywhere. I mean, you just realize the great power of caring for each other and being generous. And that's what this program is all about. So congratulations to every one of our winners. Congratulations to you, those of our listeners who submitted nominees. I hope that this keeps growing over time. If we have the same growth year over year over the next few years,
we're going to turn this into one of the most interesting award presentations in the country, and it would be great to get thousands of recommendations for inspired generosity. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Leslie. And thank you to all of our listeners, and congratulations to all of our winners. I hope you enjoyed our Inspired Generosity Awards show. It's really one of my favorite shows of the year for Crazy Good Turns. These are great organizations. If you'd like to learn more about them, we'll have links to them in our show notes, and you can also find that at our website, www.crazygoodturns.org. That's www.crazygoodturns.org. And please know that while this is a special show where we take your suggestions and honor people, we always welcome your suggestions for people to feature on our show. So if you know of somebody who's doing something great for others, please let us know by emailing us at hello@crazygoodturns.org. That's hello@crazygoodturns.org. We appreciate your listening. If you like what you've heard, please share Crazy Good Turns with friends. Please also support our show by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting platform of your choice, and connect with us on the social network of your choice. You'll find us at Crazy Good Turns, all one word. As always, I want to thank the team that makes Crazy Good Turns possible. Our producers, Brian Sabin and Megan Hanlon, editing and mixing by Score, and Leslie Nunn for keeping this operation going forward. As I think you could tell from this show, Brian and Megan and Leslie put in a lot of effort to make this Crazy Good Turn show work. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude to you, our listeners, for being part of a community that celebrates people who do great things for others. This show is just a reminder to me of how powerful it is to look around, recognize, and thank the people who are doing great things for others. And your giving of your time to listen to these stories and acknowledge these good deeds is a crazy good turn of its own. Thank you all for your help, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon in our next episode when we celebrate another crazy good turn. Thank you.